K-Wave 6 Radio and our host Kirk Spencer welcome you to our show bringing positive messages to today's world. And now, here's Kirk.
Hello and welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio. Today my guest is a law student. And you may wonder why I'm having a law student talk about Hobby Lobby. Well, I had a conversation set up for a lawyer and a law student, but the lawyer had to bow out because of previous commitments. But also, one of the things she told me is that a law student, even from her perspective, is one who actually ends up studying law a lot more than the attorney, unless the attorney is involved in that particular case. So even she says, my guest is probably much more adept at talking about Hobby Lobby at this point than she would, because she is not in that aspect of law. She does have her opinions on it, but she hasn't studied the whole case. So she has opted to stand down on this particular conversation. Also, my guest has been involved with the political arena since she was a child. Her mother was very, very involved in the political arena in her lifetime, which also got my guest involved in the politics and in law, and through her own personal experiences. She has a great deal of experience through law, which is the reason why she went into law in the first place. So, without further ado, good morning, Heidi Bryant.
Good morning.
Yes, good to have you on the program. I hope you don't mind doing the show by yourself, but I think it's going to be fun. Heidi is definitely a good friend of mine. I've known her for close to 15 years now, and she's basically become family. We've become family to each other. So, this is going to be, I believe, a very interesting conversation with Heidi. I'm going to start with reading just the summary, if you will, from Burwell versus Hobby Lobby Stores, Inc. Now, I'm not going to say that I am a law student, never have been. I know certain aspects, but this is definitely out of my realm. But the first paragraph here: the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, commonly called RFRA, prohibits the government from substantially burdening a person's exercise of religion, even if the burden results from a rule of general applicability, unless the government demonstrates that application of the burden to the person is in furtherance of a compelling governmental interest, and is the least restrictive means of furthering that compelling governmental interest. As amended by the As amended by the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000, RFRA covers any exercise of religion, whether or not compelled by or central to a system of religious belief. Heidi, you have the floor.
Right, so beyond the fact that we seem to trample women left, right, and center, and we have an issue with men deciding these issues, we have an issue within the First Amendment and some of the language within the actual opinion of the court, which specifically states that this ruling pertains only to birth control and should not be viewed to pertain to any medical objections, any blood transfusion objections. So essentially, our Supreme Court has just given and codified one religion over another, specifically violating the First Amendment in and of themselves by making this ruling. Because they have blatantly said, you know, if you are a closely held religious company, and by closely held, the majority of your board members must be of the same view. So the majority holder in the company. Okay, so essentially they're saying if you are, and I hate to coin the term, but I will, a conservative Christian company, and you don't want to provide birth control, that's perfectly fine. But if you are, by their definition, a closely held company with a Jehovah's Witness point of view, in which they don't agree with blood transfusions, you can't also have the same protections as we're going to give Hobby Lobby, Mardell, and any other closely held Christian company. So our Supreme Court, who's A, supposed to be unbiased, and B, is supposed to give an accurate interpretation of the Constitution, just rewrote our First Amendment and said that certain religions do, in fact, hold more stature and more weight with the government than others. So, aside from the women's issues, which is a whole different show for another time, or two or three, actually, we have an underlying concerning issue upon my reading, and it took me 3 times to read this to find it, but it's there, that they've essentially rewritten the freedom of religion and from religion clause in the First Amendment to say we're only going to protect certain sects of Christianity, Catholicism, etc., etc. But we're not going to protect equally deeply held religious views of other religions.
So basically what they're saying is if a, let's just say Hobby Lobby, since that's what everybody knows anyway, if Hobby Lobby employs, say, a Muslim, which has nothing to do with this Christian belief, even though Muslims don't believe, I don't think they believe in abortion, not that I know that much about it, but let's just say, yeah.
Let's just use me as an example. If I go to work for Hobby Lobby,
and you're not of the same religious beliefs, but you can say
my circumstances, I cannot have children without risking any more children without risking my life. Should I become pregnant and should it become medically necessary to have an abortion, the Supreme Court has basically said I have to get my employer's permission for that.
Eesh.
But that falls into the women's issue case. My concern is that their definition of a closely held company fits with 3 or 4 board members of the same belief and are majority holders. That fits roughly 56% of all the companies in the United States. That affects some 90% of the workforce of the United States. But we're only, based on this ruling, going to give those protections, according to this ruling, to closely held religious views that pertain to birth control, because that's such a horrible thing, not to the closely held religious views of, say, the Jehovah's Witness, who believe that deeply that blood transfusions are wrong.
All right, let's just take it from this point of view, and just out of curiosity on your opinion on this. Catholic Church does not believe in abortion. Pretty much everybody knows that. And there are a great deal of companies that are owned by Catholics in not only the United States, but worldwide. But since we're only talking about the United States, let's stick with that. So, if someone is that's the owner of a company and the majority of the board members are Catholic, they can say, we don't want to support abortion.
That is correct.
So in other words, if it goes across to Catholicism and they decide to say, we're not going to do it either, there's going to be a great deal.
We need to make a very specific distinction here, because this ruling applies to what is commonly known as for-profit companies, meaning they choose to participate in capitalism. They choose to profit off what they are making, they are selling, they are doing. versus nonprofit. Most Catholic companies are nonprofit. Most of them are held through the church. Most of your Catholic hospitals are nonprofit, your Catholic universities, your Catholic churches, and there was already an exemption in place through the ACA for the nonprofits, which simply said, we are not going to require the Catholic Church to provide birth control for its employees, so its secretaries, etc., who may not be Catholic, its groundskeepers who may not be Catholic, etc., because it violates a core tenet of their doctrine. What we are going to ask them to do is sign a little piece of paper that says they're opting out of this. We as the government are going to pick up the tab for that employee who chooses that coverage, but we need the opt-out so that we can track who we're picking up the bill for and how much that bill is, basically.
Yeah, okay. I'm not talking about the nonprofit. I'm just talking about, you're talking about Hobby Lobby, since they
Right.
are a for-profit corporation and the majority of their board members are of the same religious belief. So
Correct.
I'm talking about
A
another
Catholic,
company. You can
a Catholic
pick,
for-profit corporation
Yeah.
could conceivably take this ruling, turn around and say to their employees, we are not covering any birth control, period, because it violates our deeply held religious beliefs.
That's what I was getting at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any corporation actually can get out of covering birth control specifically if they have another specific, deeply held religious view that does not concern vaccinations or blood transfusions or general medical practice. They could petition under this ruling to also get an exception. But any deeply held religious belief that has to do with general medical practice, vaccinations, and or blood transfusion is not covered by this ruling, which is where we are now valuing one religious system of beliefs over another, which our First Amendment expressly says we're not allowed to do.
Let me ask you a question. We are coming up into a break in about 2 minutes, so we can always continue this after the break. But we're talking about birth control and the limiting of birth. And we're talking about it from a woman's point of view. And that's all fine and dandy. We'll get into that more.
Actually, this ruling addresses, and we can get into that after the break, 4 specific types of birth control only. Hobby Lobby is quite content to offer everything but these 4 types.
Great. Let's get back into that. Let's take the break right now, and we'll be right back with my guest, Heidi Bryant. We're talking about Hobby Lobby ruling. Stay tuned with us. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, this is Jason Pockrant of Live to Give over at jasonpockrant.com, and you are listening to K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hi, this is Pat Kammer, author of Love's Voice Changes You, Book 1, and I now have Book 2, which is called Hello Awesome, Message from Spirit in Pat's Patters. Buy your book from Amazon.com.
Hello and welcome back. Today's guest is Heidi Bryant, a law student in Colorado, and we're talking about the Hobby Lobby ruling. Before we left off, we were talking about, as Heidi was saying, the 4 limitations to the Hobby Lobby ruling. But before we get into that and let Heidi run with that one, I do want to ask, which she probably is going to answer anyway. Now, with the ruling, as you said earlier, if you, as a woman, if we're working for Hobby Lobby and by chance, now you're married, have, I forget how many children, but that's an important, right, at this point. She has a few children, and she gets pregnant again. You get pregnant again. You could suffer dire consequences from that.
It could kill me.
Yeah. That's dire. But to have an abortion, if you were working for Hobby Lobby, they would deny you that right. In other words, oh, you got pregnant, you knew about it, too bad, you're going to have to die. You didn't pay for the, not abortion, but the birth control beforehand. Now, I wanted to ask this from this point of view because we know this, how it applies basically to women to a certain degree, but we're going to let you elaborate on that one. How about for a man who chooses to have a vasectomy? How does that work?
It's covered.
So they will cover a man with a vasectomy, but it won't cover
Correct.
a woman.
Correct.
Elaborate, please.
They Hobby Lobby, and I've had the chance to actually look at Hobby Lobby's plan both pre and post ACA. And so Hobby Lobby's plan pretty much covers everything but an abortion. And it covers everything. So essentially, they have no problem with the pill. They have no problem with Depo-Provera. They have no problem with Viagra. They don't have a problem with hysterectomies. They don't have a problem with tubal ligations. They have no issue with vasectomies. What they do have a problem with are four very specific types of birth control. And this is what they sued on the basis of. They didn't want to cover these 4 types of birth control because based on their, and I'm going to call it what it is, junk science, they've determined that these 4 types of birth control actually impede the conception process and or induce abortion. And they have a religious objection as a corporation to covering this. Now, there is a wholly separate case law that says a person with deeply held religious beliefs acting in the capacity as CEO for a corporation is exempt from religious liberty clauses. Now, let me also preface this. As a law student, this is not a legal opinion. This is not legal advice because that gets me out of trouble. This is just my personal opinion based on what I'm reading, which is the ruling itself. So basically, Hobby Lobby said Plan B and Ella, which are known as quote-unquote morning after pills. So here's where we get into propaganda becoming a problem. Because there is actually an abortion-inducing pill called the morning after pill, interestingly enough. Plan B can be taken in the event that you are engaged in sexual activity and your chosen choice of birth control, whether that's an over-the-counter gel for women or a condom, whatever's available over the counter. So let's say the condom breaks. You can go and get Plan B, and what it will potentially do is, if you've not ovulated yet, it will delay the ovulation, thus giving the sperm time to die in the body. Okay? It will not, however, stop the implantation of an egg that is already fertilized. It will not unimplant that egg, causing an abortion. But Hobby Lobby scientists say, oh yes, that's what it does. So Hobby Lobby says, we don't want to cover this because that's abortion. And that violates our deeply held religious beliefs. And we can't possibly do that. It doesn't matter that not every one of our employees holds our same view. We can't do that. We have to essentially push our religion on everybody else that we employ. You know, the religious exemption clause given to the nonprofits was based on the fact that generally if you're working in a Catholic church, you're Catholic. They're drawing their employees from the same pool of people who have the same beliefs as they do. Period. And so in that case, everybody would hold the same view. In the case of Hobby Lobby and its thousands of employees, you can't tell me every one of them agrees with this religious philosophy, because I'm going to venture a guess that at least a third of them don't. Ella functions in the same way. It delays ovulation. If the egg is already fertilized or already implanted, Ella isn't going to do anything for you. Period. Now, you and I are of the age that we understand that copper IUDs cause abortion.
Yep.
Technology has advanced enough that IUDs are no longer just copper-based. They've advanced enough now that, yes, you can still go get a copper IUD, make no mistake. And Hobby Lobby does not cover the copper IUD. But they don't want to cover the two new types of IUDs either, because their claim, again, is that they're the same as the copper IUD. And again, it's the junk science that's involved in that.
Yeah, just because they say the Earth is flat, it's flat, no matter what the science says.
Correct. And so that begs the question that our Supreme Court justices, who obviously have had stellar law careers to get where they are at, and have achieved the highest attainable office as a lawyer that you could possibly get, either don't understand science, which I find hard to believe, don't have competent legal staff, which I find hard to believe, are incapable of having a conversation with the Surgeon General over lunch, which I find hard to believe, or we have to look at the other option here, which is that all 5 men who voted in favor of the Hobby Lobby ruling are Catholic. And do we have to begin to question whether or not religious bias played a hand in this?
Yeah, this is something that you and I, over our long-term relationship as friends, have talked about before. And for those of you who don't know, Heidi and I have been talking about many different subjects throughout our, well, I guess you could say, long-term friendship. One of those being that we've talked about, well, in many things, government's role in life, in our daily lives. Doesn't matter if it's the United States or any place else. And we've talked about it from abortion to gay rights and anything else. And we've come to at least a point where we agree on this. And this is my stance, or my wording anyway, is that while the religion I belong to is against abortion unless it is something that is life-threatening to the woman. Life-threatening meaning it could be a detriment to her life or even to her sanity. So in other words, if she was violently raped and she became pregnant from that rape and she couldn't deal with that mentally, she has the right to abort the child. Now that is basically the rights that we talk about as far as my religion is concerned. However, my belief also is that in this world that we live in, especially in lands like the United States where you have a mixture of a great deal of different people, the government is only supposed to be, which is the separation of church and state, to say that, look, this is what the law covers. Now, is it legal for us to say, from a legalistic point of view from the government, to say we're going to outlaw abortion, we're going to outlaw gay marriages, we're going to actually gay marriage is something just a little different, because they're talking about a legal contract.
when it comes to gay marriage, you're talking about your 14th Amendment rights to the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm looking at it from the point of it's a legal contract. That's what a marriage is. You sign a contract between two people, okay? And that's the contract we're talking about.
That contract affords a different set of rights to a married couple, though.
Yeah, well, okay. Let me finish my thought, and then you can say that. What I'm getting at is a marriage contract usually is something that says, hey, these two people are bound together legally. And if one of them dies, this person has legal right to the other person's property. Now, with that being understood, gay marriage and relationships, they're going to exist whether they're married or not. All they're saying is we want to have the right to pass on whatever we have built together to the other person without having to go through a probate court. Okay, so these people are going to live together anyway. So even if they have to sign over their stuff as it goes, or they have to make a mutual contract, in other words, partnership contract in business or anything else, they can literally just say, look, this is our property and nobody else has any right to it. But it's just it takes up too much time, and I'm digressing anyway. But the whole thing that I've at least come to understand from my point of view is that government should not be involved in these certain things, because the government should be telling churches or religious institutions, put it that way, you don't support this, then you tell your people don't support it. But we as a government are not going to rule on somebody's sexual activity, whether it be Hobby Lobby's ideas or another religious group's ideas about even gay and lesbian relationships. You can do it as far as the law is concerned for the law of the land. Your religious laws and adherences, those are yours.
Correct, and that takes us back to the First Amendment, which essentially says that the government cannot make any laws holding one religion above the other. That we all collectively have the right to practice our religion and to have freedom from having a religion we don't like shoved down our throats, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what this did. And let me tell you the snowball effect of this. Within hours of this ruling, government contractors, falling under the definition of a closely held company, petitioned the White House not to have to hire gay and lesbian employees because it violated their deeply held religious beliefs.
Well, the only way for them to figure that out is if persons are talking about their gay relationships, gay and lesbian relationships, openly.
No, because every company is required to provide health insurance, and under the ACA, they have to provide it to that employee's family. So the employee can go and not say that they are gay or lesbian, but the second they apply for health insurance and they list their partner, or God forbid they have kids with their partner and their kids, guess what's out in the open? Hey, that's a pair of female names coming up on that insurance form.
Uh-huh.
That's a pair of male names. Oh, wait a minute, we can't employ you. You're gay. You're a lesbian.
Okay, let's come back to that right after we take this next break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're talking about the Hobby Lobby ruling and a few other little things along with that with my guest, Heidi Bryant. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Amy Young of JSJ Phone. We are providers of junior iPhone, iPad, iPod, also Samsung, Sony, Nokia parts and accessories at very good quality and low prices. We sell to individuals, and companies have 3 to 5 days delivery time by DHL or UPS. We do delivery in 24 hours after payment confirmed. For more information, see our website www.jsjphone.com www.jsjphone.com. Contact me Amy Young mailbox emy@jsjphone.com or by phone 0086 134 1869635 by Skype emy.yang2012.
Are you ready to put an end to thinking about how you wish it were and take action? Take this step to find out more by going to coachingbyria.com. And you can receive your free consultation session with Coach Ria. Coach Ria is a certified professional life coach with a passion to help make the difference in the world.
Hi, and welcome back. We're continuing our discussion about Hobby Lobby and the ruling. Not so much about Hobby Lobby so much, but the ruling that came from it. And my guest, of course, is Heidi Bryant. We left off before the break talking about how employees could figure out whether or not you just openly said...
Employers.
Pardon me?
Employers.
I'm sorry. What did I say? Employees?
Employees.
I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Yes, thank you for the correction. How employers can actually tell, and we're going to let Heidi explain this because my question is, if you're going into a company and saying, oh, okay, you're not saying that I'm gay or a woman, I'm lesbian. You're not going in there to say that, and you don't list a partner, whether or not that person lives with you or not. You don't list somebody, you just list yourself on that the insurance form. How can an employer tell that?
There are any number of ways. We all watch the privacy laws with increasing concern. So employers can and do hire people to befriend you on your Facebook. If you're open about it on your Facebook, There you go. If you decide to participate in Pride Fest and you're caught, there you go. If you and your partner decide you're going to adopt a child, even if you are only covering yourself on that insurance, if you add that child, 9 times out of 10, the insurance company is going to require either proof of birth or proof of adoption. And your partner is listed on that.
So unless you're ultimately very secretive, people...
Unless you're going to stay completely in the closet and never be seen with your partner, you could simply be out to dinner one night with your partner, and somebody from the corporation could be in the same restaurant and see the two of you together.
Which also kind of brings up, as you're saying, the privacy issue, because... when I used to live in Chicago, my cousin, he and I used to hang out together a lot, but then again, we were both divorced.
Right.
And so...
Could that have been misconstrued? Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
I can tell you that my sister and I, with enough alcohol, can do some pretty interesting things, and it could absolutely be misconstrued, and we're both married heterosexual couples.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we don't play and have fun.
Yeah, actually, yes, I'm thinking about many women, especially, well, I can't say especially these days. There's always been a thing about how women seem to always have that freedom to hold hands in public.
Sure.
And they're heterosexual, no questions about it. They're heterosexual. It could be sisters. It could be just friends. And women are very close and loving, and they have that mothering instinct. So
and depending on how well you know the person and how comfortable you are with your own sexuality, let's caption it with that.
Yeah.
I have photos of my sister and I collectively licking whipped cream off each other's chests.
Uh-huh.
We're both married to men. She has 2 children. I have 5 children.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody looking at that photo would make the assumption that we were gay. Mm-hmm. We were a gay couple. You would have to be. My God, they're the only ones who are ever that blatantly open in public. Mm-hmm. That's bull.
No, it is, in some of my lives before, I almost sound like a cat. I used to work in the bar industry, and you see a lot of crazy stuff
get
there.
Drunk and be cozy with each other in a way they would otherwise not act
mm-hmm.
if they hadn't let their guard and their hair down.
Yeah.
Now, there's also potentially a benefit to this ruling, and it's something that I'm watching very carefully. And we'll touch on it briefly, and we'll let it go because it hasn't been determined yet.
Uh-huh.
We all know about Guantanamo Bay, and we all know about the egregious violations that occur in Guantanamo Bay, especially in reference to the Muslims and how they're treated based on their religion down there, and mm-hmm. how limited their religious practices are down there. A group of lawyers representing a group of people from Guantanamo Bay have actually filed a restraining order against the United States, allowing them communal prayer for Ramadan, I believe it is, as is custom, based on this ruling.
Mm-hmm.
So it may have some good implications, but on a whole it has disastrous implications in terms of the fact that we separate religion from government, and we do it intentionally because we don't want one religion to carry more weight than the other in terms of influence on the government. However, this ruling very clearly gives more weight to a certain type of religious belief over any other. And I'm not going to say religion because this type of belief spans many religions, but one particular set of beliefs over another, which to me is just as bad as saying Catholics are better than Baptists or Baptists are better than Catholics mm-hmm. in the eyes of the law. We have to so very carefully tread that line of not favoring a set of beliefs or a religion in the government's eyes over any other, or the very foundation, because we are, after all, talking about the First Amendment to the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking civil rights, which came many years later. You know, we're not talking an amendment passed in the 40s, 50s, or 60s. We're talking about an amendment passed in 1890, 1791.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is one of the original 10 amendments, or our Bill of Rights, which is the foundation of an ever-fluid document that has, in my opinion, and not my legal opinion, just my opinion, been egregiously violated. And we as a society have gotten so used to women as second-class citizens that we're so focused on the issue of, oh my God, you have to ask your boss what birth control is okay, that we're losing sight of the far more egregious violation this ruling creates.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's the more important topic to talk about. We can get to the women's part of it later. The majority of the U.S., believe it or not, is female. If these people keep pissing us off, eventually, and we've seen it throughout women's rights movements, eventually, we all collectively get together and say, we're not your punching bag.
Uh-huh.
So do I think that through legislation in Congress and the Senate, we'll eventually fix this ruling? Because that's the only way you can fix a Supreme Court ruling. is to pass new legislation that essentially overturns their ruling. That's the only way to, because they're the ultimate authority. Yes, I do. I was very encouraged recently when on the Senate floor legislation was introduced to overturn this ruling. I expected it not to get past the Republican filibuster, and I expected it to be between 15 and 20 votes short of getting past the filibuster. It was only 4 votes short. What does that tell me? Some of these people are waking up to the fact that maybe they're making some bad decisions. Maybe they should back off just a little bit. Not enough of them are there yet, but we're getting there, and change is slow. That's the other thing. I don't expect this to be corrected overnight, but I do want people to understand, outside of the contraceptive issue and the women's issue in this ruling, which is primarily what everybody is focusing on, we have now had a government body hold a set of religious beliefs higher in principle and make a law holding them higher in principle than any other religious belief. And that is an egregious violation of the First Amendment.
I want to ask you a question because you already tapped on this, and see if my memory serves me correctly. Back in the 50s, President Eisenhower, who was a Republican, was in office when the Korean War actually was taking place. And there were a great number of people within the government, especially within Pentagon, that just wanted to we've already used the atom bomb on Japan, so let's just go ahead and do it on Korea. Let's just stop fighting. Let's just wipe them all out, and we'll just deal it from there. And he was under a lot of pressure. He didn't want to really do it, so he put it out to the public to see what the public said. And the public said, no, we do not want that. And he got the response back from the public. He says, well, the military wants to do it, but the public says no, so I cannot go against the public because we are essentially, I'm kind of paraphrasing here on this part, it says we are the public servants, so we cannot go against what the public wants. How has that changed?
Well, the easiest way to say that would be Citizens United has changed that completely. And that was the first case in which we deemed corporations to be kind of people. And Hobby Lobby is the second case in which we say corporations combined, Burwell versus Hobby Lobby and Citizens United collectively together say corporations are in fact people. Corporations were never granted rights underneath the United States Constitution. Individuals were.
You're a natural person versus an artificial person.
Correct. If Hobby Lobby, rather than becoming a corporate entity, which is how corporations are defined by law, entity. Entity is not a person. It's a thing. Okay? By legal definition.
Right.
If they had formed as a sole proprietorship, it would have been different. Because in a sole proprietorship, the owner of the company, there's no distinguish between his personal and his corporate. There's no separation. They are one and the same. When you become a corporation, you are separate from your corporation. So the quickest, easiest answer is when Citizen United was passed, we basically opened the door for corporations to buy off our politicians. Doesn't matter what brand of political party they are, whether they're Libertarian, Tea Party, Democrat, Republican, Purple People Eater Party. Doesn't matter. And honestly, I'm very fond of saying I believe at this point our Supreme Court and our senators and our congressmen on national levels need to wear the same jumpsuits that NASCAR and IndyCar drivers wear, identifying who their sponsors are. And we will quickly get to the heart of why we no longer collectively act in the interest of our constituents, no matter what our constituents' flavor of party is, and why we now act only in the lobbyist's interest and what benefits our bottom line.
Yeah. Let me ask you this before we go into our last break. Because you said it, and I do want people to think about this, is that, okay, even if corporations are considered to be persons now, even though they're not considered to be natural persons, how does, I forget how many million of people there are in the United States, about 300 million or more, I forget what exactly it is.
Something like that.
300 million people in the United States versus, I don't know, a few 100,000 businesses
Right.
in the United States. How do they actually get to go above and beyond the natural persons in the United States besides money?
Money. Money is everything. They can spin the propaganda to create an unlimited supply. So if you have a candidate who has been in political office their entire life, knows nothing beyond the walls of Congress, who's backed by major corporations and major political PACs, which are the new thing, then not only can the corporation at an unlimited level donate money to that campaign, but they can also funnel money into the super PACs, which is referred to as dark money, thus trumping the little guy who wants to get in and do what's right for his fellow citizens. It becomes money. You rarely see a candidate get elected to office who has not spent millions, if not billions of dollars in a campaign. That's not to say it doesn't happen, but it rarely happens anymore. It used to be, and it probably still existed in the late 80s, but probably hasn't existed since the 60s. It used to be that people actually evaluated who they were electing to office. They looked at, how does this person vote? What does this person think? Is this person going to act in my best interest? Now, more commonly, and as recent as the last election, because I follow this stuff, I know less than 6 of my friends ask me how they were supposed to vote. Do you know how disturbing that is to me?
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I'll tell you what I think, but I'm not going to specifically tell you you need to vote for this person or that person or this person or that person. So in allowing corporations to endlessly fund a campaign, we're no longer able to hold a consequence to the candidate's actions while in office. I.e., we can no longer say, okay, if you make bad decisions, we're going to replace you with somebody else. Because A, we don't think for ourselves anymore, and B, there's enough money behind that candidate to convince enough people that they really are the best option.
Yeah. We're going to stop right there. Keep that thought in mind. We're going to come back to that thought as soon as we come back from break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with my guest, Heidi Bryant.
Do you get writer's block or tongue-tied when you try to write or talk? Need a wordsmith for a script, article, or research paper? Let K-Wave 6 Productions help you with all of your audio, visual, editing, and language translation needs for your business or hobby. Does the thought of creating a website give you chills? We also have webmasters to help you with all your website needs. Remember K-Wave 6 Productions. www.kwave6productions.tk or email us at info.kwave6productions.tk.
Hi there, this is Chad C. Meek, writer and executive producer of the epic UFO thriller Giant Rock the Movie. Even if you haven't been abducted by E.T., you need to listen to the K-Wave 6 radio network to get the latest of the odd, the unusual, or more importantly, the fun. See you at the movies.
Hello and welcome back to K-Wave 6 Radio. We started our conversation today about Hobby Lobby. We've kind of diverted a little bit, but kind of bounced back and forth in it. Well, my guest and dear friend Heidi is a law student. Is just make sure that you understand that all the conversation that we've had on the show and subsequent shows to come, because she has agreed to do this at least once every 6 weeks, these are not to be considered in any way as legal advice. We're just talking about things that we have we care about. So just remember, this is for you to think about and for you to take any actions if you so choose on your own, or no actions at all. That's your choice. Now, before we went on break, I have my own way of wanting to reintroduce that part. Let us introduce the driver of this particular party in his suit and all the labels of all the corporations that support him. So, take it from there, Heidi.
So basically, change in the government does not happen quickly, and there have been subtle rulings over time. For anybody who wants to go and look these up, you can Google the Supreme Court, you can get on their webpage, and you can read everything they've decided since its inception, if you so choose. A lot of it is legalities you may not understand, but they will reference other cases, and you can simply type in so-and-so versus so-and-so in your Google search engine, and it'll bring up the case if you so choose to look and see what they were looking at in that case.
By the way,
Anybody can do that. That's not legal advice. That's not a legal opinion. Anybody can do this. This is stuff I was doing before I was a law student.
Oh, yeah. And online you can also find, because legal speech is actually usually defined through Black's Law Dictionary. BLACKS, Law
Blue
Dictionary.
Book.
And
Use Blue Book.
Yeah, and you can find that online.
Yeah,
So
it's out there. Now, there's going to be some things you can't get to because it's restricted access. However, any Supreme Court opinion, either the ruling opinion, whether there's a concurrent opinion, and a concurrent opinion simply means that they agree with the ultimate decision but not the way they got to the decision, or a dissenting opinion, which in this case was written by in the Hobby Lobby case was written by all the female justices. And you can see where they disagree with the majority opinion. And you can see the premise that they use for it, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that is available in the lovely technological age we have with your Google search engine. Not a difficult thing. You may or may not understand what you're reading. It happens. You will, in time, learn to understand it if you so choose, or you'll decide it's really not something you care about. But change does not happen quickly. So the biggest impact in terms of shifting from being worried about going home and facing constituents and being replaced because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, shifted with Citizens United. Mm-hmm. And we're not really off subject talking about that because the Hobby Lobby ruling is the second essential part of Citizens United, which fully grants the Bill of Rights, which is your first 10 amendments in the United States Constitution, to corporations, which it was never anybody's intent from the Founding Fathers up to Congress 20 years ago that passed the RAFTA legislation. Nobody's intent was to ever give corporations rights under the United States Constitution, which is why we have separate corporate law. Mm-hmm. And why we have separate regulations for corporations, et cetera, et cetera. So, essentially in between 2008, I believe, was Citizens United, and now, 2014, so in roughly 8 years, we have allowed for corporations to buy votes, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yes, the voting system is still the same. Yes, everybody has to go cast their vote. No, corporations don't get to go cast a vote. Okay? But they can buy that vote off the, and I hate to use this term, but it's the truth. They can buy that vote from the uneducated, uninformed U.S. voter. Period. And it didn't used to be that way. Now, that's not to say that they've not been able to tweak stuff in the past here and there. But the bottom line is there are three key rulings here that have opened the door for corporations to position themselves in the future to essentially buy Congress, the Senate, and eventually, potentially, the presidency.
Well,
which takes us from a democracy to a plurocracy.
Yeah.
For anybody that's curious.
In the last election, it used to be discussed in the media. Some of it's alternative, some of it was mainstream media. That the likes of, well, it wasn't media, so I won't sit up here and try to hide their names. The Koch brothers and other people like them.
It's still discussed.
Yeah,
yes.
Were actually telling their employees to actually vote in this particular manner for this particular person, and under threat of, well, losing their job or whatever the case may be.
Termination.
Yeah.
Yep, which is illegal.
Uh-huh. So, elaborate on that one a little bit.
Well, look, the Koch brothers got in trouble for that when it got out, and they quickly reversed their position. Oh, that's not what we meant when we sent that memo out. It's been misconstrued. You know, the propaganda Kool-Aid spewing machine quickly went into effect, and they said we were just simply suggesting that they should vote that way. But when the Koch brothers can personally donate millions of dollars to a candidate and then can turn around to their super PAC, which is raising money from on a national level on its own, and funnel millions of dollars into that and dominate airtime, dominate ad time, and put a machine out there on the ground encouraging people to vote for a specific candidate that's then not going to necessarily do what's in the interest of the people in their district, but what the Koch brothers want to do, because typically this is how this works. Your biggest donors give you the money, you win, and then they remind you that they gave you the money to win. Mm-hmm. It's not blackmail. The implication is you owe me a favor now.
Yeah.
So when this piece of legislation comes down the pike, that's not favorable to me, doesn't fit with my corporate ideals, doesn't fit with my personal ideals, doesn't fit with my religious ideals, I want you to kill that legislation.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that works.
Yeah. And
between Hobby Lobby, which basically says you now have to ask your employer if certain types of birth control are okay with them, and whether or not, and Citizens United, which says corporations are no longer limited in the amount of money they can give to a candidate. Mm-hmm. Now, that's the key. Prior to Citizens United, corporations could still donate money to a candidate, but they were capped so that they couldn't influence an election. Period.
So in other words, now if let's say a district or a county in the United States, or different counties in the United States, the citizens decide to, hey, we like this person, they don't have the money to actually promote that person for that election because they don't have the money to actually put them out there.
Correct. It's not that they can't put them out there. They can put them out there with $20 if they want.
Yeah.
And they can all go pound the pavement and knock on every door in their county if they want.
Uh-huh.
But it's definitely harder. And here's the deal. You and I are old enough to understand the Russian propaganda machine and what a beautiful thing that was, quite frankly. and apparently still is, based on what I'm seeing off subject and what's going on in the Ukraine with the downed plane. It's a masterful machine. You see that now more in political ads than you have ever seen it in your life.
Uh-huh.
You can blatantly see, if you have the knowledge and if you take the time to learn, where things are edited together to make it seem like it's one thing when it's completely something else.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it has become a sponsorship game.
Yep.
And I'm not joking when I say I think our congressmen and senators should have to wear the little jumpsuits that the NASCAR and Indy drivers wear to have the little patches on them that tell you who their sponsors are.
Yeah. Big time.
Because it's very, very telling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked to see that the Supreme Court was even going to hear this case, first of all. And I will openly admit, I was shocked by the ruling. And I refuse to believe that these justices, first of all, are stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've gotten to where they've gotten based on how well they've performed. So they're clearly knowledgeable. They clearly understand the law.
Mm-hmm.
It is not easy to get a clerkship with the Supreme Court. You have to be a pretty bright legal student to do that. So I don't think it's a case of lack of research on their end, or they have access to every government official out there. Okay, if they want to go have lunch with the Surgeon General to ask a question, they can. If they want to go have lunch with the head of the FDA to ask a question, they can.
Mm-hmm.
And these people aren't going to tell them no. So I really have to go back to, do we really need to start looking at the fact that these are lifetime appointments for these people, and religion is starting to color the opinion of our Supreme Court?
Mm-hmm.
And that bothers me also, because unfortunately, any piece of legislation that is passed on a national level and signed by the president and enacted into law, and any piece of legislation by a county, a city, a municipality, etc., that has a potential constitutional question in it or implication in it, the ultimate authority who decides, yes, that's a violation of the Constitution, no, that's not, is the United States Supreme Court. They are the last authority, short of Congress looking at the ruling and going, wow, you completely blew that, and we're going to fix that.
Yeah.
And we all know that right now our Congress isn't doing anything except for going on vacation.
Yeah, that must be nice. They keep voting down minimum rates, and they keep raising their own wages and going on vacation.
Et cetera. So, the concern then becomes, if these 5 justices really did allow their Catholic religion, and that's out there. Anybody can look it up. You can look at who the 5 justices were that agreed that Hobby Lobby had a right to do this, and you can see what their religion is. They're all open about it. All 5 men are Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go back to, how much did their religious upbringing and their religious views play into this ruling, where they essentially threw the Constitution out the door and egregiously violated the First Amendment, in my opinion.
Yeah. With that, we're going to have to bring the show to a close, unfortunately, because as you probably could tell, Heidi and I do get into long conversations, and we quite enjoy each other's conversations. However, the good side of this is Heidi has agreed to come back once every 6 weeks, so she should be back around mid-September. And with that in mind, if you have any questions and or suggestions for our next show, you can contact her and I through info at kwave6radio.tk. That's info at kwave6radio.tk. Also, I'd like to remind you that on our homepage, you can find all the links to our shows. present shows and archive shows through podcasts.com, iTunes, Stitcher.com. We have an RSS feed, and all of our shows are also placed on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, which is K-Wave 6. And all of our downloads are free. You don't have to download them to listen to the show, but if you want to, you can download it. It's always free, the current shows and the archive shows. With that, thank you again, Heidi, for being on the show. Okay, Heidi's probably got her kids in the background.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I do have a child waiting to ask me a question.
Okay.
I thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to future conversations.
Definitely. And with that, everyone, thank you for attending the show, and we'll see you again soon. Be well, and take care.
Thank you for being part of our audience. For more information about K-Wave 6 Radio and the services we offer, go to www.kwave6radio.tk. Have a wonderful day.